Kerbishley is still with us. We'll be getting his thoughts on Manchester United for Crystal Palace in just a moment. But let's head straight to Old Trafford and to speak to Alan Pardew, who was our co-commentator for this game. Alan, is that 4-0 scoreline reflective of the match as a whole, would you say?
I think so, yeah. You know, United, just looking at them from up here, they're looking so confident at the moment in everything they do. Not just their offensive work, which is obviously threatening, but the defensive work and the natural kind of assurance they have on the ball was very assured today. They took the lead early, which was a problem for Palace. And from that moment on, the game was never in doubt.
Who was your standout player from a Manchester United perspective, Alan?
Well, I didn't need to pick him, really, because the crowd picked him. They were only singing one name at the end, which is Fellaini's, which is a strange name for him to sing here, because he was never been really a favourite. But he was terrific today. He got 2 goals, but everything he did was oozing confidence. And as I say, he kind of typified the team. But, you know, as he walked off, the crowd were cheering his name, and that'll be music to his ears, because he's really had to fight a lot of criticism at this football club. And Jose knows he has a player there at the top of his game and somebody who's very important to him. I think he stressed before that not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, he's a real character, a real great guy to have around. So fair play to him. He was the best player on the pitch today.
The table makes awful, really, doesn't it, for Crystal Palace? Played 7, lost 7, scored none, conceded 17. How deep is this crisis now for Roy Hodgson's team?
Well, the crisis comes, of course, not perhaps the next game, but the games after, because there's going to be so much pressure if Chelsea beat them, you know, to win the next game where you think might be winnable. It puts extra pressure on the team, and that makes it even more difficult. But the press and the media really going to heighten this no-scoring position that they're in, and they needed to get that off today. And they had half a chance. I thought they had a penalty, really, and they were probably harsh not to get it. And that's the sort of break you're going to need, just to get that sort of monkey off your back. That goal, no goals against column is awful. So that's a problem for Roy. But the team were disciplined today. They tried their hardest. They're missing some key personnel in Benteke and Zaha, and that's really showing. They didn't really have the threat on the break that you normally associate with Crystal Palace, and it was a bit punchless at times. OK, Alan, thank you very much indeed. Good to speak to you. Have a good rest of your weekend. Thank you. Alan Kerbishley, what did you make of that then? 4-0 to Manchester United. And Alan Pardew says it was very much a reflection of the game.
Yeah, it was routine. I mean, they scored their goals, Man United, some really good times from early on after 3 minutes and just before half-time. Start the second half, Fellaini made it 3. And there was no way back for Palace. So you've got a situation that Roy's gone into, you know, no wins, no goals, and no centre-forward, no recognised centre-forward to play. So I think there's a lot of... he's got 2 weeks now. I don't know how many players will be going off on national duty, but he's got 2 weeks to try and find an answer, and the next game's Chelsea.
And for Manchester United, a 4-0 scoreline in the Premier League this season. We've only had 7 games. I mean, how much of a message is this to the rest of the Premier League, and particularly to Manchester City, who play?
Well, it seems whatever you can do, we can do a little bit better at the moment. And the top teams are not just winning their games, they're thrashing teams. We've seen Tottenham win 4-0 today, Chelsea winning 5, Man City winning 5, and then Man United winning 4. You know, they're really putting perhaps the inferior teams to the sword. And, you know, I think scoring goals for fun. And Man United's problem last year was Old Trafford, and they seem to have shook that off. But I'm just looking at his squad. I think when Mourinho gets Ibrahimovic back, I mean, he has got a squad to contend with, and a big, strong, solid squad as well, where he can rotate players, and I think he'll be fighting on all fronts this year.
And that Old Trafford record, by the way, this season, played 6-1-6, scored 21, conceded 1 in all competitions. And off he goes. Doesn't like an international break, does Jose Mourinho. Obviously worried about players getting injuries, of course, stuff that's out of his hands. But 4-0, and I suppose, why wouldn't he be just thinking it's a routine victory? They got off to such a routine start and such a quick start.
As we said, they scored really early on, which settled them down, and, you know, the goals came at the right time for them. But this is a great bit of skill from Rashford. He feints to cross it with his right foot, which I think everybody's expecting, especially Joe Ward. Comes back onto his left foot, comes inside. It's the perfect pass for Mata, who sees it and he knows exactly what he's going to do with it. He's going to plant it in the bottom corner. He's going to go for placing it more than power. It's a lovely ball back from Rashford. Bottom corner, no chance for Hennessy.
And also Lukaku taking players with him as well here, Alan.
Yeah, once Rashford went past Joe Ward, he drew the defence towards him, and Lukaku went to the near post and left the space at the far post for Mata.
Alan Pardew was saying that Marouane Fellaini was his man of the match. The crowd chanting his name towards the end. What did you make of his performance?
It was interesting because he was playing as a holding midfield player today, and he can do that role. I mean, we often see him playing as perhaps a number 10 or pushing forward and balls in the box. Much maligned Fellaini. David Moyes signing, same as Mata, but they're both coming good, and I think this just typifies him. He knows this ball's going to come in the box. Ashley Young checks back. It goes to the far post. You know, Puncheon doesn't see him, but even if he did, he wasn't going to get on the end of it. It's a great cross, and the pace of the cross takes Hennessy out of the game. He can't come for it. And Fellaini at the far post, it's a simple tap-in at the end of it, but it's the cross that makes it, obviously. And I think that Ashley Young is another player that perhaps much maligned.
And what about this? I mean, it's quite a deft header, isn't it? But all the damage done with the cross.
I think Rashford's going for goal. And I think he's indicated he's going for goal. And he's just going to put in there with loads of pace. And Fellaini gets his head on it, and they've got no chance for that one. Hennessy's got no chance for that cross either.
OK. Well, Marouane Fellaini did take both chances that he was offered. Romelu Lukaku took a little while, didn't he, Alan Kirbyshire, to get on the score sheet. But he eventually did get his goal in the 85th minute. What did you make of this one?
Well, he flicks this ball on, and then he makes his way into the box, and it's about Jesse Lingard taking the defender away here. As Martial crosses it, he's left a simple tap-in. I mean, he missed an absolute sitter just before that, didn't he, Lukaku? And as Jose said, perhaps he didn't think he was going to get on the score sheet, but he couldn't miss this one, could he?
Well, he missed one earlier that was...
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Just, you know, on the penalty spot, and he had players around him, but he managed to slot it wide. Now, this is how Romelu Lukaku's got on in his first 7 games in the Premier League for Manchester United. Same record as Andy Cole, 7 from 7. And look who he's ahead of there. Louis Saha, who had such an explosive start to his Manchester United career, and also Dwight Yorke and Ron Van Persie. In their own right, legends. How does he compare with them?
Well, I think that when you sign a player for, what, £80-odd million or whatever the fee was, and he hits the ground running and produces this sort of form, it makes everyone feel a lot more happier at Old Trafford, for sure. But I think, as a striker, it's important that you do get off the mark, which he did do very early on. And he's just playing with so much confidence, like the rest of the... I wouldn't say the rest of the team, I would say the rest of the squad. Because whoever Mourinho brings in just replaces someone else and plays just as well.
And one man who's certainly playing with confidence is Marcus Rashford, and certainly with England playing in World Cup qualifiers coming round the corner, Gareth Southgate will be pleased with this as well. What did you make of his overall display?
Well, it's his pace that takes him away from players. It's so devastating, but, you know, he wants to play down the middle. We know that. But because he's so good, Mourinho's got to find a place for him in the side. So he plays out on the left, and we know perhaps defensively he might switch off. But he's another player that is playing with so much confidence. He could do with a few more goals. I think that, you know, forwards, they live off of scoring goals, and he's had a few opportunities. But he's just taking defenders on, he's attracting defenders to the ball and opening up space for other players. And I think that here he's definitely going for goal. It reminded me of a Rooney goal some time ago. I think he was away at Stoke. But as I said, he's playing so well that Mourinho's got to find a place for him in that side.
OK, well, we've heard from Marouane Fellaini and from Jose Mourinho, but there's 2 sides to every story, and sadly for Palace, it's a bit of a sob story. And, of course, he's always going to say that, isn't he, Alan Kirbyshire? Focus on the upcoming games. But how much of a slog was that for them today, Palace?
Well, I think David Delaney hit the nail on the head. It's the results before they've just played Man City and Man United, you know, not getting any points out of the Swansea, Huddersfield and Burnley, teams that perhaps Crystal Palace will target. So I think these games that have come up, and the next one, Chelsea, they've not wrote them off, but they're thinking, you know, it's very, very difficult for us to win anything and get any points from these games, but it's the games afterwards. And that's what Roy will be focusing on. I think they'll be working ever so hard these next couple of weeks. They've got Chelsea, and then it really starts. They've got to start picking up points after the Chelsea game. If they can pick anything up against Chelsea, great, but I think they're looking a little bit further ahead.
OK.
And I think Roy was realistic in his interview there. We've played against the cream of the Premier League, and we've got another one coming up. The damage was done early on in the games against Huddersfield, Swansea and Burnley and whatever, where you expect to pick some points up. And I think that he'll be targeting them 2 games after Chelsea. Obviously, they're going to go into the Chelsea game hoping and trying to take something from it. But really, I think it's the games after that. They've got to get something against Newcastle and West Ham.
good thing to have an international break now because it gives some respite, or bad thing because they don't have an immediate response?
No, it's a good point. I think Roy renounds himself on his coaching and especially his defensive organisation. How many of them players are going to go off on international duty? I'm not too sure. But if he's got a majority of the squad, he'll be working them very, very hard indeed. OK, let's have a look at the Premier League table this Saturday afternoon. And this is the bottom of it, as you can see. It's not just the fact that they've got that big fat 0, but it's the goal difference as well. And interestingly, Alan, is the fact that they've already got to win 2 games to make up the ground, right? That's the problem. They've got to win 2 games to catch the 4th spot. And that means no one else is going to pick any points up. So if it gets worse than that, by the time they play that Newcastle-West Ham games, they may need 3 wins to get out the bottom 4. OK, so Bournemouth also in trouble, and West Ham too. Look at the top, and Manchester United lead the table. Well, temporarily at least, and Manchester City are playing at Chelsea this evening. Tottenham also up to 3rd, courtesy of their 4-0 win against Huddersfield at the John Smith Stadium as well. In terms of Manchester United, Manchester City, I mean, do you still expect the title to be decided there, Alan? Yeah, I think whoever finishes above Man City will win the league, either Man City or Man United. But Mourinho said something interesting in there. They had to win today because he knows Chelsea and Man City are playing each other. They're both going to drop points, or someone's going to drop points. That's why it was important that Man United won today. OK, Alan, we've run out of time, but thank you once again for your company this afternoon. So, Fellaini fires United to the top for the moment at least, but Palace still pointless and the pain goes on. See you after the international break. Bye-bye.